Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Scaling Up event today. I am Dielza. I'm going to be here today hosting the questions that we have for our speakers. So today's event is Scaling Up Sustainable Business. We're going to talk about business and sustainability. This event is in cooperation with the European Parliament, and today we have Ture and Maria from the European Parliament office in Finland, and I would like to welcome them and say a few words about the event, and also present the first speaker.
Thanks so much. Hi everybody, my name is Ture Niemi. I work as a public relations officer at the European Parliament's liaison office here in Finland. We are part of the Director General for Communication at the Parliament Secretariat, and our mission is to foster connections between the European Parliament and Finnish citizens. So we've been very excited to work on this event together with LUTES. It's been our pleasure, and we hope to come to Lappeenranta more often. Our office is located in Helsinki, but the more that we get out of Helsinki, the better. So today I'm sure we'll have plenty of discussion about sustainable business and the future of Europe. This is a really exciting topic because there's been massive developments on the field. Our first speaker is Sirpa Pietikäinen, member of the European Parliament from the European People's Party group. Sirpa has a long experience working at the crossroads of business and environment, so it's going to be very exciting to hear about her views on sustainable business and sustainable development and economy in Europe. Sirpa is a member of the Economics Committee of the European Parliament, and she has been working a lot, especially on sustainable finance. So if you have any questions related to that to her, I'm sure that she will be very happy to reply. But from my end, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions about the EU, or if you would be excited to organize anything related to the EU in Lappeenranta, please be in touch with us. Our mission is to serve you guys on anything related to the European Union. If you are excited to hear more about us and our work in Finland, do sign up for our newsletter at together.eu, yhdessä.eu. There's also plenty of events like this that we organize around the country to get people excited about what the European Union is doing and get people involved in discussions about the future of Europe. So now I think I will ask Sirpa to deliver her address, and I hope that you guys have a nice afternoon with us. We have also got some coffee and carrot cake and sandwiches for us to enjoy after the event. So thanks a lot for coming, and thanks a lot for LUTES and to Sirpa for participating. Thank you.
So hello to everybody. I'm super excited and happy that I have the chance to have a discussion with you about the sustainability and businesses, because you are the guys making it happen in the future. You are the guys to have the innovation, the knowledge, and the understanding for this major transition what we are expecting to have in the field of businesses in the future. And I would call it a sort of a Copernican challenge. And what I mean by this is that sometimes you have those moments of the history where basic understandings on how things are and how they should be dealt are changed, like the planetary orders in history. And imagine if you think that the world is flat. You can't create a concept of sailing around it. So you need to understand the scale of the challenge, what is the challenge and the new concept before it makes any sense to make the change, and whether you understand or not that actually around the circular globe you can indeed sail around it. So let's start sailing around it. My first message would be that all the businesses in the future need to be future-proof. That means that before you start any business and before you make the plans for 10, 20, 30 years ahead, you need to know what kind of ecological challenges we are facing. And this is as important as the economic challenges. So a company without ecological knowledge and understanding, and those people in the top leadership and also on the boards of the companies, is incompetent. It's a bit like you wouldn't understand whether your company is profitable or not, or how the technology in the company works. And what this requires It requires, first of all, to understand that you can't look only environmental challenges in silos: biodiversity, climate change, chemicalization, land use, the new threats like new chemicals or microplastics. And if you look only one of these slots, there's a big possibility that you go wrong. And in some cases, the bioenergy, let's take an example of a palm oil, is a good bad example of that. You think to do something good for the climate, but in the matter of fact, you are worsening the situation in biodiversity. And while biodiversity and climates are interlinked, you need more biodiversity and the ability to adapt when climate change is proceeding. And then again, climate change is worsening the situation of the biodiversity. So first of all, try to understand and to get the whole scope of what are the environmental challenges, and they are the resource efficiency. We would need to be up to tenfold resource efficient in the future. Not only slightly better, because that only consumes the investments on underperforming investments, but up to the future challenge on backcasting approach. Then it would mean that you start designing the business concept with this tenfold resource efficiency, not harming, but compensating the losses and the impact on the biodiversity. It would mean that you are climate neutral, or hopefully in the future towards 2050, you would need to be climate positive, so the contribution would be positive food handprint on this area. It would mean that you avoid harmful chemicals. You do not use that kind of substances, that you do not know the long-term impacts. You, of course, take into account the social responsibility that is a part of the bigger sustainability concept. And you would need to take into account, of course, climate change, the emissions, and other impacts on the environment. With this longer and broader understanding, in existing businesses, everybody should be able to make transition plan. The transition plan means how your business at the moment is unsustainable and what needs to happen. And do you do it within 5 years or 10 years or 15 years? How do you transform that business to be sustainable with all of these elements? So this is the big picture. It is supported by the circular economy plan, what the EU is having. We are having the first new coming package this spring, and the next one coming next autumn. It is supported by quite soon upcoming Sustainable Products Initiative. That means that you need to design out of the waste. You need to design your economy to be service economy. You need to design the products to be as long and durable as possible, modular, so that you can upgrade and repair them. And then when you can't do that, the raw materials are used in the highest possible level. So it is a bit like the recycling of a PET bottles. You just don't mash it among the other plastics, but you use it as the basis for production of new bottles. Special focus in the circular economy package is in textiles. That is a growing challenge all over the world and in Europe. And we are waiting within a couple of weeks the Sustainable Textiles Initiative to come from the Commission. We are waiting then the next one to come, and this is the sustainable buildings. In both these areas, we already have a very good and sound knowledge base in Finland that should be further developed. And then in the buildings, that is the most important part, the future buildings, and after the renovation, the existing buildings would need to meet all these sustainability challenges, what I was talking about. Then the third one is food in its all forms, and this is something we are going to talk more, I know, today, how and with what kind of innovations at agriculture we are going to make our agriculture that is lacking very badly behind, of course, globally, but also in Europe. How do we make it sustainable and up to the future challenges? Then on the European level, the next steps and the issues to pay attention to are, first of all, the regulatory base, and that comes from, for example, out of the Sustainable Products Initiative. And I'm very happy to send you all the linkage. If you wish, please do contact me if you have any questions in general and concerning the upcoming initiatives. I can feed you up with the links and the material about circular economy, about the textile, food, buildings as separate items, about the Sustainable Products Initiative, then about public procurement, state aid, the taxonomy and funding resources. Okay, then what needs to happen is that the policies need to be science-based, and this is where the EU is heading to very strongly. So you can't only sort of pick up something out of what you think that this might sound good idea. And the science-based need to ensure that we are not making sidetrack investments, because actually going to a sidetrack faster, or not to talk about like in palm oil example, going faster to a wrong direction is not the answer to the solution. So beware of that kind of underscored investments, underscored answers, and underscored investments. Something better than existing, something better than the worse is not the aim. The aim is, according to the science and sound indicator setting, the best according to the knowledge, what we can provide and what we can do. And please bear in mind that in business community, this requires the ecological competence, what I mentioned, but it requires also the agility. So the eagerness to learn and to adapt the business models according to newest information, data and science, what we are getting. Then what needs to happen is not only to push the industries, all the industries on the right direction, but we would need to ensure funding for that. The funding comes from private and public sources. Then when it comes to public sources, there's a wealth of resources actually available and underused to the required level of ambition. I mentioned the RRF, that is the big support package, over 1,000 billion in European level. I mentioned Just Transition Fund, how to make the innovations and the transition just, and this is very acutely important in buildings, in energy consumption, and of course in food, for example, when you look the societies overall, and energy is very much on the top of the nexus at the moment. And we do have the special funds for renovation wave. That means to put up the funds to renovate the existing building capacity that is going to be roughly 80% the same buildings in 2050 so that they are up to the challenge. So they should be energy positive. They should be, of course, good ambient air quality. They should be modular so that you can fix and refix and reuse the different parts and elements and materials of the buildings. And then when you make the renovation, you should have the ability and knowledge to do the best in the class, the golden standard, because no one wants to go a renovation after 5 or 10 years. But then when you do it as well as one can do. Then on the public side, and this is underused resource, and we have a pressures from the parliament towards the commission, is how do you use the public procurement in member state level? The public procurement is about 20% about our GDP altogether. So that is the biggest amount of the money what we can use to have a positive pull effect, or then the negative push effect if we buy poor quality sourced from the third areas, third countries in the worst case. Let's pick up the food as an example on this. And then also very short durability. So there we should push for that kind of a public procurement where the priority should be always on sustainable investment and to create that way the business opportunities for European-based businesses, and also that the strategic autonomy what we need very desperately in Europe. This should go to state aid also. So we should not be able to grant state aid only for that kind of a companies that are on the pathway of a transition to sustainability, or that they are sustainable to start with. And the European semester, where we look at the national budget, we would need to have a scrutiny that we do not support unsustainable businesses and practices. For example, we still have the support on unprofitable coal mines in Europe. But we should put all the money on supporting this transition. Okay, how do we then know that the companies are sustainable and industries are sustainable? One part of that is the sustainability reporting requirements that are coming for the companies, so that the investors and the public sources know the level of a sustainability. And of course, what is very important, the companies themselves know the level of their sustainability compared with other industries and compared with other companies on that industry, and that they can show what is their pathway to better sustainability in the area. This means in the future also due diligence regulation. That means the fact that these reports should be audited. It should be on responsibility of the top leadership of the company and on the boards to ensure that what you say is based on the best available knowledge and technology and best competence. So something about on that direction is not enough. Okay, then I saved the taxonomy on the bottom and the sustainable finance, because we do not lack the money. We have about 100 trillion capital on private investments, and a big part of that is our pension funds. And the question is, how do we put that money to work for the good? Nowadays, about 1/3 about it, about 30 trillion, and trillion is a million, as you know, is invested on unsustainable practices and businesses. So it is important to get that money out of that to neutral or slightly better, or even on the green end, on sustainable end on the investments. That's why we need, first of all, the taxonomy that is working better or worse on creating the climate criteria, biodiversity criteria, circular economy criteria, the use of resources criteria, the implications on emissions and water. This is going to take about 3 to 4 years to get the criteria on place and then workable for investors who know the comparison by the sustainability reporting then on the industries. But it is not only that. Within the taxonomy, there's also a very crucial and important element of do no significant harm. You can't produce solar panels and call them sustainable if you produce them with the child labor, for example. So they need to be overall sustainable. And the do no significant harm gives us the indication, what is the 30 trillion? What do you need to get invest out? For example, in Finnish case, this is very much part of the wood burning and wood energy consumption. Not all of it, but some of it, and of course the peat. It is a question in European level of labeling the coal consumption as unsustainable and excessive energy consumption in the longer term, as well the criteria for harmful and damaging impacts on biodiversity. But besides this taxonomy, this means, and besides the reporting, that we need a lot of financial regulation. I'm happy to talk with you later on about the solvency, how you measure the credit worthiness of insurances, how you measure the credit worthiness of lending of businesses, how you put that in the investment portfolio analysis and all that. So it means at least 20 pieces of legislation where we need to incorporate the sustainability aspects. This is a flavor of what we are doing and trying to achieve. And now I'm happy to do your comments and questions.
The thorough presentation of what the EP is doing regarding the sustainable policies for businesses. We, in person here in Parvi, we have around 40 people and we have another 40 people on Zoom. So we will try to take a couple of questions, starting from the audience here right now. Are there people who would like to pose questions? Okay, so just keep this when you speak.
Okay, I have a question, and basically it boils down to how do you hold companies accountable for sustainability? I think the past 2 years have shown that you can make all these plans and say all these things, but when real life happens, sustainability kind of falls near the bottom of the priority list. For example, you know, disposable masks, disposable tests, disposable food containers, all of that. So how do you make sure that sustainability is still accounted for?
It has two sides. The first side is this kind of a semi-voluntary actions, and this is the sustainability reporting I was mentioning. So basically, if you underscore in the reporting, you probably wouldn't be getting investments. Your share value will drop down, and the lending costs of the company would rise in the future. But there are some other initiatives going on. One is the EU environmental criminal law that I'm a rapporteur at the moment. What you define as criminal environmental crimes and hold the companies responsible, and how do you hire the sanctions when these actions are deliberate or just for pure strong negligence. And there's even a proposal that I'm very strongly supporting, that we would need to have a new category of crimes that is called ecocide. That is the nature crime, that if you deliberately or by negligence destroy nature and cause people to die, let's say, because of the poor air quality in the cities, you are held responsible of that, and you can be sued on these bases in the EU and national courts. But Parliament has proposed it 3 times, and I'm going to propose it as part of this environmental criminal law review process. Let's see when the Commission will come up with the directive proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any? Oh, okay. We have another question.
Yeah, so you mentioned these financial subsidy programs and such, and as far as I understand, they mostly are based on certifications like, for example, the ESO 14000 family of standards, etc. And these standards and certifications have faced a lot of criticism in the previous, I guess, decade about how the certification processes are resource wasteful, or they, you know, add unnecessary complications to projects and can cause cost overrun, or that they are, you know, administered by numerous different bodies to different extents and they're not really consistent. What's your opinion about these criticisms and overall these standards?
Well, I think that we need standards and in the future too, but we would need to do a lot of work on developing the standards, and we would need to sort of phase out our total reliance on them. And that's why we would need to have the science-based indicators that take into account the whole life cycle. So basically, this is the methodology how you count the CO2 emission of certain industry or its biodiversity footprint or emissions. Well, that is pretty clear that we know already how to do that. And that then this information would be the basis. Already now, when I mentioned the funding, you can use the standards, but it is very much up to the member states what tools they choose when they finance the innovations, for example. And there's quite a lot of liberty to use new technologies and new ways, because we have to remember that the standards are not always the golden standard. They are a bit lacking behind in one hand, and then the second hand, if you look, for example, the buildings and new innovations, they do not take that into account. So there needs to be, and there's the ability to use the funds for other kind of projects too.
Okay, so we have time to ask one more question for now, and then we will continue to the next speaker.
Hi, I have a question. So as you mentioned that policy needs to be science-based, in case of a small organizations or small companies, which government and everyone trying to promote them to use for renewable energy, to switch it to renewable energy, but there is not enough support so far, because I couldn't find any proposition that for them to save the tax money, because the price of a, let's say, wind turbine or solar, for the production of the extraction process, they have to pay for the carbon tax. And it's when small organizations, when they try to implement their renewable energy, also they couldn't get any support or no tax-free. So is there any proposition coming in future for this? Because that is the main point, that the renewable energies so far, like, everyone should go for it, but the price and the taxation is still so high.
Well, we are expecting to have the new CO2 tax on European level. Let's see how it lands now, but that would facilitate it. And then one side of the story is making the fossil energy more, and unsustainable products in general, more expensive, so that in proportion would lower the renewable energy prices. Plus, then renewable energy, when you can scale it up, comes cheaper and cheaper over the time. So that is one part of the story. Of course, you could use, and this is the reason why we have these different funding elements. and there's the social fund coming also, an investment fund on basis on ETS. And so you could use to subsidize on the beginning of innovation the new renewable energy. So that would help and facilitate the transition. But let me pick up another possibility that I find very important, because now when we are talking about the indicators and science-based, it is a very broad and complex area, a bit like the IFRS in accounting in general is for companies. And the big companies and consultancy companies can master that. SMEs not that well. And that's why we are waiting that in the longer run, we would have a simplified version about that knowledge and calculation methodology to be used by SMEs. It's a bit like the nutrition value tablet, if you know that. Actually, the value of potassium and proteins and calories in a portion of broccoli isn't equal in all pieces, because it depends where it is grown and what is the content of water on it and so on and so on. But we think that this kind of approximation is enough, because then when you make a salad, you know that when you add these ingredients, it's approximately this high or low, the total amount in calories or potassium or whatever. And the same kind of methodology we need to develop definitely for SMEs, so that they can approximate the best choices and be compensated for that. But this is still underway, and there has been proposals. I've made it 3 times for the Commission to start creating the database, but it's not yet the Commission's decision.
Thank you.
Okay, so because of the tight schedule, we have to move to the next speaker. Thank you so much for your answers. I hope we will going to have a little bit more time later to answer a couple of more questions if participants have so.
On my side, I need to run to another meeting. So thank you very much. And do not hesitate to ask me once again to come somewhere to talk about this more in detail, or to ask the materials what you would like to have, or in case you have any additional questions, to just send them to me and I'll get back to you. So all the best for all of you, and I hope that you are going to be the future savers and have a very good seminar. See you hopefully in the future.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day, and we'll keep in touch, hopefully. Okay, so our next guest speaker will be Pasi Vainikka, who's the CEO of Solar Foods, also a LUTES University alumni, and then an adjunct professor of renewable energies here. So founded in 2017, Solar Foods is a food tech company that develops innovations for global food protection. To speak more about sustainability and business, we will give space to Pasi. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
very good. Yeah, I'm in a new place to me, so I'll try to test my connection. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Really happy to be here. Yeah, LUTES alumni also. And after my studies in energy engineering, I went to work for our National Research Institute, VTT, for more than 15 years, and came together with Juha-Pekka, my dear co-founder of Solar Foods, at the Institute. And here we are, maybe 6-7 years after starting the first research on what we are doing. But the company itself has been here for about 4 years now. What Solar Foods does, maybe in the Q&A later on, if someone wants, I can explain more the details, but what our gift to the society is to disconnect food production from the use of arable hectares, because in practice, all the environmental implications in whatever form, they are due to the land use of agriculture. And if you can disconnect from that, then basically all the environmental benefits fall on your your lab. What we are doing technically is fermentation. When you are making wine, you have a sugars liquid, you add yeast, and this yeast eats sugar for energy and carbon. In our case, our microbe that is naturally curing, it does not eat sugar, but it eats small bubbles of hydrogen that we make with electricity from water and carbon dioxide. And these are the main ingredients how the organism grows. Just serves the purpose of life, which is continuation of life, grow and multiply. And these dried cells are our product, what we call solein. It just happens to be so that these cells are nutritionally very close to dried meat, dried soy, and a bit of dried carrot because of high beta-carotene content. So we are here to produce in the diet in a very diverse way animal-based products or nourishment that typically we get from pulses, nuts, or mostly from animal-based products, because 80% of the environmental impact of agriculture is due to industrialized animal keeping. All in all, about 2/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions globally originate from the energy system and 1/3 from the food system. So the problem is huge, and our solution is this delinking. We've raised funds. Now going further, maybe speaking about my experiences on startup life and being an entrepreneur in the, let's say, clean tech space. We've raised funds 66 million today, so 66 and in euros, and we are building our first commercial factory close to Helsinki airport, anti-clockwise from the airport, 8 minutes by train in the city of Vantaa, and it's supposed to be mechanically complete by the end of this year and go to market a bit more than a year from today, halfway 23. So relatively soon, we actually expect to have new protein in yogurts, in different kinds of snacks, fortified pastas and noodles, meat alternatives, dressings, cheese-like products. So it's used in a way like a wheat flour, that it's an ingredient that you use, but you never eat it as such in a powder form. Now, my learning regarding startup life, I could split it in 3 themes. One is technology, the second is funding, and maybe with the flavor of what Sirpa just talked about is regulatory. Now, it's quite important if you're thinking of whether founding a company or becoming an entrepreneur, is that you must have some kind of idea. It can be technology, it can be really hardcore technology, deep tech, or something that you really know well, or then it can be some kind of a innovation that is rather more about an innovative idea and execution than coming up with a gadget. It doesn't really matter where you are in the scale, because neither of these is important, or the prime importance for an investor if you're looking for a venture capital funding, because primarily venture capitalists look to the team, who you are, and who is your co-founder, your friend, this colleague that you work with, who you are, what's your background, what is it that you know, and if you have a nice technology, then it's kind of on top of that. But the venture capitalist must be, and the funders must be convinced that not if, but when the hard days come, this is the team, this is the people supporting each other, they will pull through. That's why the team is the core thing, and therefore, especially your kind selves now in the situation where you are, it might be a hugely unique opportunity, time to, of course, build your own capabilities and learn more, but also to become friends with someone who studies something completely different, or with a very different background, because from diverse backgrounds you can cook a sauce that will enrich this team to become successful. So where else later in the life is so high chances then now during your studies to meet people with so different backgrounds and maybe experience. So I encourage you to make friends and learn and see if there's opportunity also for a business or an idea. What you need to have from the technology side is what they call proof of concept. So if it's a technical, if it's software, something you would need to have the first piece of something, a device or whatever that you have, and that is typically the role of public funding to fund research or similar type of activity that generates proof of concepts from the research, especially being in the university life and environment, also technology. So through that basic research and applied research, this proof of concepts can work, and then you might with a very small thing you can convince the investors. We started with a teaspoonful of powder that we pitched to investors and pulled together 2.5 million to 4 years ago for this idea. So the team was credible, we were told, and then it works. So then let's make a plan how to scale. The good thing is that VC money is a lot available. Every credible venture capital fund who has made their money during the bubble or during the couple of decades in e-commerce or something like that, every credible fund has also sustainability angle and basket of projects. And food technology, amongst other clean tech areas or sectors, have become a serious sector, or food tech has become at par with any other clean tech technology, let's say electric vehicles, batteries, wind, solar, and that kind of thing. So food tech very recently has become kind of mature venture capital target. Now, Sirpa mentioned about pension funds. I just want to shortly touch on that. Yes, but later on, one needs to understand that at different stages of company, there might be an idea that you need few thousands of K to fund your proof of concept or do something well together, something at the Cheney Heinemann's or whatever. And for that, you need maybe an individual who provides you 20K or something like that. It's kind of an angel funding. And later on, Series C or Series A, as they say, you need some hundreds. And then there are investors who specifically, they do 500,000 checks or so. It's another group of investors and people. And then again, later on, there's a whole different kind of people and funds and a bubble, parallel reality, where also maybe the pension funds belong to, who fund companies who have revenue. So you are on a market, yeah, you already have a product, and then it's more about scaling, not developing the product. Then your target audience and the venture funds are completely different to that of in the earlier stage. So basically, when I've been pitching solar foods, my audience has changed all the time, and the funds kind of change. The role of policy here is to signal that it's going to be, there are policies that will promote or support subsidies quite extreme, but nevertheless, or whichever form this is, it's all these different kind of initiatives that politicians can make. They are signaling where the regulatory framework is going, and of course new opportunities open. Now, in terms of energy, having also energy background, or especially energy background, it's quite interesting to see, although due very sad reasons, that the green transition, what we've been living through in the Europe, that we can discuss if it's been efficient and fast enough or not. We did discuss early in the research that will there be kind of Pearl Harbor effect that will really get the green transition going, and maybe what we are seeing in Europe today is kind of a Pearl Harbor, that we are coming to a new reality, and not least because of security of supply for energy and so on, but also food. This also impacts our narrative because we don't need arable land or so. So it kind of pushes also these same buttons that we've been working on. So political signal is important, but then again, no venture capitalist or startup or company can be solely based on public initiative. It can, but for a venture capitalist point of view, this law or directive one morning, it can change. So if the law foundations vanish, what happens to the company and all the investment? So the risk is quite huge, political risk. Therefore, signal is important, and you see the vectors going, and there might be the opportunity somewhere there, but based on of a single law, it might be a risk or a huge opportunity. But that's just something to take into account if you go to a venture capitalist and start a clean tech company. So based on a single piece of regulatory, okay, it has its risks. So therefore, why to do these things, and what do where the opportunity for scaling then lies is that you need to empower the individual to become part of something good. So if we're thinking of producing sustainable foods, yes, the foundations has to be there, a no-brainer to be sustainable. However, still there must be taste, convenience, and price that you need to get right. And only after that is the natural choice of the consumer to opt for that food. It might not be because of environmental reasons if it tastes horrible, right? So empowering people for good, and then things start to move. I would have had a couple of points to Sirpa regarding regulatory, because the European regulatory sometimes is quite slow, and we do have this competition ongoing, North America, US especially, Europe and China. So how new technologies are rolled to the market and how regulatory framework develops and how agile it is, there European Union has a lot to do. And from a startup point of view, it doesn't really matter if, for example, our food is not regulatory approved in European Union. Well, of course it does matter, but there are parallel realities like North America, where you can introduce these products and start your business. It doesn't have to be in the European Union, but I'm sure European Union would rather like to have it in the market launches of the technologies developed in EU to be launched in the European Union. So therefore, the startups are quite flexible in launching their products globally. EU is not the only framework. So that's for the lawmakers to think. And maybe I close with the thought that even if there is team and there's technology and there are funds and huge innovations, still it's startup and green entrepreneurial life is about execution. So there may be technology, maybe not, but execution, doing things and getting things forward is still the key for a successful case. I end it here. Thank you very much for your attention, and I can stay for 10 minutes for questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation. We can take a question maybe for these last 10 minutes. I see one question in Zoom. Okay, so yeah.
Okay, our investors regarding so geography actually is global. So we do have Asian, we do have European, Central American, North American, British. So that's our investor base, also Finnish.
And we have a question from the audience in Paraguay.
Hi, so you mentioned the launch markets and how the European Union was not an ideal one. What would you say are the main barriers to entry for startup companies such as your own when you started in the European market that aren't present elsewhere?
Well, regulatory framework can be. I wouldn't say there. I can't identify anything else because the capital flows very smoothly. So investors are there for good teams. It doesn't really matter where you are, where you come from. But the regulatory framework does matter. So for novel foods, there's a clear difference. So European Union takes about 2 years, US 1 year, Singapore 6 months.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have another question.
So I've been following your company. I remember seeing in 2018 some news articles and videos, and there I think your two main issues that you mentioned was the scalability and the certification, and you even touched on certification more. But I wanted to ask even more specifically, outside of just the time scale that it takes in the EU, was there more, like, was it more difficult to get your specific product certified for the market as compared to, for example, getting a new breed of tomatoes certified, considering its unique nature in being basically a, I guess,
Yeah,
biologically based protein additive, if you can consider it that.
yeah. I think I understood. So if it's another type of tomato, although it has to be to a certain degree different to what we have today, it would fall under the same regulatory as we do. So the good thing is that there is novel food regulatory framework, and there is European Food Safety Authority in the case of the EU. So there is a process. So only a couple of years ago, there was no fixed process how, when, and by whom new ingredients are approved. So now there's a clear process, and it's the same for everyone. So whether it is non-GMO like ourselves, although it's new species, it's the same regulatory framework, and soon we'll see that the GMO product will follow the same regulatory framework as well, or if it's kind of a significant modification to existing. So there it's equal for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have time for only one last short question, okay? Please.
When everyone was asking question, I was checking some articles about solar foods. So there I read something about that you use the electricity to produce hydrogen to make the food more proteinous. So I wanted to know, are you using water electrolysis to produce this hydrogen?
Yeah, correct. And also, if you Google, I'm sure there's a recent news, maybe from last week, that we invested about 2 million euros to an electrolyzer, and that is going to be the hydrogen generation unit for our factory O1 in Vantaa, and it takes about 1 year to get to the site. So ramping up spring 23 is something what we aim at.
I may also ask one more question, like what is the source of this electricity grid for this electrolyzer? Is it coming from renewable or coming from the district? I mean, the source of this electricity.
Yeah, so what do you do? Yeah, so what do you do? Short answer is that we do the same as Google or Microsoft the data centers do. So you make in these latitudes, you make a wind power PPA, power purchase agreement for several years from a certain wind park, and you buy that annual production that covers your annual consumption, and then the balancing power you buy from the electricity market. So sometimes you're selling the wind power if it's in excess that you bought, and sometimes you are buying from the market, but on annual average, that wind park covers your consumption. That's how it's done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your time and your presentation and your insights. So we're not going to take more of your time, and yeah, I hope we'll keep in touch and we get to learn more from you in the future. But yeah.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you guys for participating and asking very, very, very nice questions. So now I guess we can just chat and with each other, and also, as Ture said earlier, we have a corner of snacks and drinks. So yeah, sorry for people who are on Zoom who cannot do this, but yeah.
Thanks for joining.